Alright, Sonoma, Indy configuration. Track's 49 degrees. I'm not actually sure where that ranks in the races this week, if this is hot, medium, or cool. So just keep that in mind when you're in a race. If there's a big change in temp, you'll have to maybe do a little adjustment. I've got SPO 4, ARB 8. The description will have the setup. If you're struggling for time in this track, if you're new to it, it's a very flowing track. It's really important not to overcook it into corners. You will lose a tremendous amount of speed. It's really important to brake early and get on the power early. Any of these corners, you lose a lot of time if you outbrake yourself. If you're stuck, in the 47s or 48s or something, you may want to try an ARB of 7. It'll be a little more forgiving. Scrub a little less speed until you get into the flow of things. So we'll go through the corners in slow-mo as usual and then run it out at full speed. Here we go. So coming into, I guess, this is actually turn 1. Fourth gear, holding it pretty tight to that cement barrier there. Cold tires, you're probably going to have to lift in this section. Fourth gear, yeah, you'll need a little lift probably on the first lap or 2 or 3. Once the tires are warm though, you can take it at full speed. So coming up to the curb here in fourth gear, just kind of car length or so, starting to brake. Again, when it's cold tires, probably braking right at the beginning of that curb. This is a really important turn. This sets you up for the next couple of corners, and if you come in here too hot, you're really going to cost a lot of time for the next few corners. So braking down into second gear, and basically you'll see it at full speed, but where the curb starts to taper off here, that's where you want to be in second for sure, and kind of starting your turn in. Important part is getting again on the brakes, probably more than you think you do, and then getting on the power just to settle the back end a little bit, and yeah, just picking it up, getting on the power. You don't want to get too heavy on these curbs, they'll push you wide, but better to be a little bit more on these curbs than running wide, because this sand up here is unforgiving and there's not a lot of runoff here. So shifting up into third, make use of the curbs on the left here, but don't go over them, don't get onto that sand. There's going to be a lot of crashes here. This is a crashy track I found in the past in my experience. Shifting up into fourth. Basically, when you're up top here, aiming for these buildings, it's kind of a little bit of a blind section here. So just aiming for those buildings in the foreground there. Up in fourth, you want to be up tight against this yellow line, but again, sand not such a good idea. You can really lose the back end. I've shifted up into fourth. Again, on cold tires, you may want to leave that in third. You may want to take this corner in third. Third gear and probably a little bit of a lift, but once the tires are warm, you can take this fourth gear full speed. This track really, again, as well, cold tires to hot tires is a big difference. So the early laps, you do have to take a little bit of a different approach, a lot more cautious, I guess. Fourth gear, and then you got to get in tight. Again, if you're wide here, there's a camber to this corner. If you're wide, you're going to push wide and get into trouble with that sand and lose a lot of speed, and you'll miss the next apex again, which will cost you a lot of speed. So this whole turn 2, 3, 4 kind of section is really important to get right. If you mess it up at the beginning, you're chasing your tail. You're not going to get it back too good. So at the end of these curves here, shifting down into third, and then just sort of feathering the throttle, a little bit of a lift into this corner. Again, you want to just graze the edge. You don't want to get up top here too much. And then just feathering on the throttle and getting up to full speed. This one takes practice because the exit is blind, so it takes some practice to figure out how fast you can come in and not get onto the sand, because the sand is an X for sure. If your hands are steady, you can survive going onto the sand, but if you crank the wheel, you'll spin out and it's game over. So fourth gear, making use of these curbs, and then about a car length before the end of the curbs, braking down into second gear. On cold tires, you may even want to just briefly brake down into first gear, and this one is a little tricky, especially if there's a car in front of you, so just practice getting a feel for where you gotta brake. One thing about this track I find is there's really a lack of markers. If your graphic settings are different than mine, if you've got more options ticked off and you see better braking markers, let me know, leave a comment. So bring down into second, pretty hard on the brakes. Again, hard on the brakes so you can get on the throttle early. So just picking up the throttle, you want to get in tight here. I came in a little hot and missed the apex here, so don't do that. But yeah, picking up the throttle, second gear, third gear, make use of these curbs again. Fourth gear, you want to be on the right hand side of the track. Again, there's going to be passing opportunities here, so practice defensive lines. And at the crest of the hill, you want to get on the brakes, shift down into third. Cold tires, you got to brake harder. When the tires are warm, it's a little bit of a light brake. I came in here a little too tight, so don't do that. I would rather be probably about a car width over right now, ideally. I came in a little tight, and you gotta watch if you're tight like this, you kind of get sucked in here, so be careful of that. And in third gear, and just sort of, you gotta keep a little throttle on to keep that back end steady, otherwise it's gonna kick out on you. And ideally I would have been, like I said, about a car width over here, and then lining up for the edge of this curb. So I lost a little time here for sure, coming out a little wide and going through that whole section not quite as fast as I could have. And then just working your way up into fourth. You've done it right if you're exiting the curbs, the last 20% or so of the curbs. You've done it pretty good. I exited a little early there, not my best corner, but it's not too bad. So holding it in fourth, basically looking for this light standard. It just takes a little judgment and practice to figure out just how far away from it you have to be. Again, not really any great markers here. Breaking down from fourth into second, and then you're looking for the end of the curbs on the right here. Turning in, still in second gear, and then in full motion you'll see it shifting right around here into first gear, just letting the car drift out wide a little bit so you can crank the wheel. First gear, already picking up the throttle. You just have to ease on the throttle. You don't want your rear tire spinning, because you can spin out or you'll just scrub a lot of speed. So back first gear, and then quick shift up into second and third and fourth eventually. And yeah, just clipping the edge of the left here. And then here you just want to try and straight line it as best you can. This curb on the right, you don't really want to take too much of it. It unsettles the car a fair bit, so you just want to clip the edge of it. But this curb here you do want to get on, and at the end of this curb is your turn-in point. In fourth gear, you just want to try and open this as much as you can. Fourth gear, cold tires, you're probably going to be lifting here, but hot tires, full speed. And you do want to really get onto the flat part of this curb and even take a little bit of the edge of it. If you run wide here, again, you're going to compromise the next one and you're going to lose a lot of time. So yeah, if you've done it right with hot tires, you can keep the throttle pinned. This corner you want to be right up against the curbs. You could probably open the wheel earlier than I have. Surprisingly, one part of this track where there is actually a lot of room on the exit is this turn if you've done it right. So fourth gear, you could maybe switch up into fifth, but I prefer to keep it in fourth. That's up to you. Again, this is a really troublesome corner for a brake marker. So what I'm looking for is, there's the commentator box here, or whatever this is, and then looking for the light standards here, and basically wanting to brake in between them. Fourth gear, down into first, and it's pretty hard on the brakes, harder than you think, because this corner comes up on you faster than you think. You also have to watch actually your braking and downshifting. The revs can spike on you pretty good here. And this the trick is, the reason why you want to brake so hard is you really want to cut this corner as much as you can. More than that, you're probably going to get into trouble with an X or a slowdown. Yeah, so just be careful with that. That takes some practice. And then again on this one, this curb, it doesn't look like much trouble, but it does unsettle the car a bit. So just be careful of that. Going over it, you may want to just be off throttle. It doesn't look so bad, but it does really jar the car a bit. And then just picking up the throttle into second gear, third gear, fourth gear, getting up all the gears. Again, not much runoff here, and the track actually turns into the left. So this one, it takes a bit of practice because you run out of space really quick on the exit of that one. And then coming up here towards the end, so looking for the end of these of this curb as a braking marker. Again, if there's a car in front of you, that's going to be tricky. So, kind of at the whatever this sign is as a braking marker. From fourth gear down into first, and then again looking for the switch between the green and the purple here, or the end of the purple is a turn in. So in first gear, and this corner is really tricky. This takes a lot of practice, and you can actually cut this corner, and I don't know, there's no real good markings to show, I don't know them anyway, where you get the slowdown. If you cut this too much, you get a very painful slowdown. But if you cut this enough and don't get the penalty, you save a lot of time. So it just takes some practice. If you know where the exact spot is where you get the slowdown, please leave a comment. I would love to know. But in first gear and just picking up the throttle. Again, you don't want to spin the tires. You can spin out here pretty easy or just scrub a lot of speed. So just listen to your tires and put the throttle on appropriately, and then just run yourself out here to the edge and just hug this inside line, because another good passing opportunity. And if you go really to the right, you actually extend the track a bit, so it will cost you a smidge of time, but nothing too major. So yeah, it's a 1:44.9. I left some time on the table. There's some little mistakes there. So yeah, give that a whirl. Hopefully that takes a little time off your laps. We'll see you out there. Yeah, watch this track if you haven't driven it before. It is, like I said in my experience, a lot of crashes on this one. So watch out for that. We'll see you next time. We'll run it out at full speed. Good luck.